3 hours later, the Harmony Chamber had been transformed into something that looked more like a music studio than a diplomatic meeting room. Dr. Amy Carter had connected her portable audio equipment to the alien ship's systems and was working with Commander Velkoth to understand how their sound generation technology functioned. The metallic alien, once terrified of the humans, now seemed fascinated by their approach to acoustic engineering. Lisa sat across from Ambassador Zixthera, sharing a meal of foods that both species could safely eat. The alien had changed colors several more times during their conversation, finally settling on a warm golden hue that seemed to indicate curiosity and growing friendship. "So let me understand this correctly," the ambassador said, its musical voice now more like a pleasant song than the funeral dirge it had been earlier. "Humans intentionally expose themselves to loud, chaotic sounds for pleasure. You call this music?" "Not all of it," Lisa corrected, taking a bite of something that tasted like sweet fruit with a hint of electricity. "We have quiet music too. Lullabies, folk songs, classical pieces that are gentle and soothing. But we also have music that's loud and aggressive because it expresses certain emotions and experiences that quiet music can't capture." Helen Park had spread out charts and graphs on the table, showing the ambassador various examples of human musical development throughout history. Music evolved with us as we faced different challenges. Work songs helped people coordinate physical labor. War songs built courage before battles. Celebration songs marked important events. Sad songs helped people process grief and loss. Marcus Johnson was across the room with several alien crew members, demonstrating something on his personal music player. The aliens were taking turns listening with protective equipment, trying to understand how humans could enjoy what they heard. Their reactions ranged from confusion to fascination to outright horror. "This one is called jazz," Marcus explained to a creature that looked like a metallic tree. "It started in the early 1900s in America. The whole point is controlled chaos. Musicians improvise within a structure, creating something new every time they play." The tree-like alien listened for a moment, then made a sound like wind through metal leaves. "The patterns are unpredictable, yet somehow they form a coherent whole. How do the musicians coordinate without predetermined instructions?" "Oh, practice and listening," Marcus replied. "They learn to hear what the others are doing and respond in real time. It's like a musical conversation where everyone is talking at once, but somehow it all makes sense." Dr. Amy Carter looked up from her work with Commander Velkoth, her face glowing with scientific excitement.
"Captain, you need to see this."
"Their sound generation system doesn't just produce frequencies. It actually manipulates the quantum properties of sound waves themselves. They can create interference patterns that exist in multiple dimensions." Ambassador Zixthera's color shifted to bright blue, which Lisa had learned meant surprise or interest. "Dr. Carter, your species has no knowledge of quantum acoustics. How can you understand our technology so quickly?" Amy grinned. "Because humans are really good at figuring out how things work, especially when those things make interesting sounds. Give us a new instrument and we'll find 17 different ways to play it within a week. Give us advanced alien technology and we'll want to use it to make music." Lisa leaned forward, sensing an opportunity. "That's actually something that could benefit both our species. Humans love making music, and you've got technology that could create sounds we've never imagined. What if we collaborated?" The Harmony Chamber fell quiet as all the aliens considered this idea. Lisa could see them looking at each other, having some kind of silent communication that her translation device couldn't pick up. Commander Velkoth was the first to speak. "You would want to use military-grade acoustic technology for artistic purposes?" "Absolutely," Lisa replied without hesitation. "Some of our best music comes from repurposing technology that was originally designed for other things. Electric guitars were invented by amplifying acoustic instruments. Electronic music started with military radar equipment. Drum machines came from rhythm devices used in marching bands," Helen Park added. "And working together on music could help both our species understand each other better. Art is often the best way to bridge cultural gaps. When people create something together, they learn to see the world through each other's eyes." Ambassador Zixthera stood up and began to pace around the chamber, its branches swaying with what Lisa now recognized as deep thought. "The Galactic Council will be surprised by this development. Our entire assessment of humanity was based on the assumption that you were a violent, destructive species that needed to be contained. Well," Marcus said with a laugh, "we can be pretty destructive when we need to be. But mostly we just want to explore, learn new things, make friends, and create cool stuff." The violence usually only comes up when someone threatens our friends or tries to stop us from being who we are. Dr. Amy Carter had been working quietly with her equipment while the others talked. Now she looked up with a mischievous grin. "Captain, I think I've figured out how to reverse the polarity on their quantum acoustic generators. Instead of creating chaotic interference patterns, we could use the same technology to create incredibly complex harmonic structures." Commander Velkoth made a sound like metal singing. "You want to turn the harmony breaker into a musical instrument?" "Why not?" Amy replied. "You've already got all the components you need. Multiple frequency generators, quantum wave manipulation, dimensional interference capabilities. With a few modifications, this could be the most advanced musical instrument ever created." Lisa stood up and walked over to the damaged control panel. "Show me how it works." Commander Velkoth hesitated for a moment, then began explaining the system. Each tentacle controls a different frequency range. The quantum manipulators are here, here, and here. The dimensional resonance chambers are built into the ship's hull itself, so the entire vessel becomes part of the instrument. Lisa's eyes lit up with possibilities. "So the whole ship is basically a giant speaker system with reality-bending capabilities. Dr. Carter, are you thinking what I'm thinking?" Amy nodded eagerly. The first human-alien collaborative album, recorded using quantum acoustic technology aboard a diplomatic vessel. It would be historic. Ambassador Zixithera stopped pacing and turned to face the humans. Its color had shifted to bright gold, and its voice carried harmonics that made the chamber itself seem to sing. "You would truly want to create music with us? Despite our attempt to use acoustic weapons against you?" "Especially because of that," Lisa replied. "You showed us something amazing today, even if you didn't mean to. That weapon of yours has the potential to create sounds that no human has ever imagined, and we've got thousands of years of experience in turning sounds into music." Helen Park was already taking notes on the potential cultural implications. "This could be the foundation for ongoing cooperation between our species. Shared artistic projects often lead to scientific collaboration, trade agreements, and lasting friendships." Marcus walked over to join the group at the control panel. "Plus, once other humans hear what's possible with this technology, you're going to have musicians lining up around the solar system to work with you guys. Human artists love new instruments, especially ones that can do impossible things." Commander Velkoth's metallic surface began to reflect light in new patterns, which Lisa guessed meant excitement or happiness. "I have spent my entire career learning to create sounds that cause fear and submission. To use these same skills to create beauty and joy, it would be like discovering a completely new purpose for existence." Dr. Amy Carter connected her equipment to the alien control panel and ran a quick test. Instead of the chaotic assault they had experienced earlier, the system now produced a low, harmonic hum that seemed to resonate with the quantum structure of space itself. The sound was unlike anything humans had ever created. Not quite music, not quite natural phenomena, but something entirely new. Lisa closed her eyes and listened to the impossible sound. "That's it. That's the beginning of something completely new." Ambassador Zixithera moved to stand beside her, its branches gently swaying to the quantum rhythm. "Perhaps the Galactic Council was wrong about Deathworld species. Perhaps what we saw as violence and chaos was actually creativity and adaptability." "Maybe," Lisa replied, opening her eyes and smiling at her new alien friend. "But there's one thing I should probably warn you about before we go any further with this cultural exchange." The ambassador's color shifted to cautious yellow. "What warning?" Lisa's grin widened. "Wait until you hear about something we call heavy metal concerts, and mosh pits, and crowd surfing, because if you think dancing to your weapon was impressive, you really need to see what humans do when we're actually trying to have fun." The big space station buzzed with activity. Students from many different planets walked through the clean white halls. Some were tall and thin like trees. Others had crystal skin that sparkled in the light. A few had 4 arms instead of 2, but one student looked very different from all the rest. Jake Morrison was human. He came from Earth, a planet that other species whispered about in scared voices. At 19 years old, Jake was younger than most students here, but his body was strong like steel. His muscles showed even under his school uniform. The teachers had told him many times to be careful around other students. They were not as strong as humans. Jake listened to every warning. He nodded and promised to be gentle. He knew that not everyone grew up on a world where everything tried to kill you every day. Earth was dangerous. Very dangerous. The animals, the weather, the plants, everything on Earth wanted to hurt you. This made humans tough. Much tougher than most aliens knew. The trouble started in the fighting practice room. This was where students learned how to fight in space battles. Zixith was there with his friends. He was from the Villani people. They were fast and could jump very high. On their home planet, the gravity was weak and the air was thin. Nothing there was very dangerous. Zixith was telling his friends how good he was at fighting. His voice sounded like music when he talked. This was normal for his people. When Jake walked into the room, Zixith saw him and smiled in a mean way. "Look, the human from the Death Planet is here," Zixith said with a laugh. "Are you going to show us more of your simple fighting ways?" Jake stopped checking his equipment. He looked at Zixith with calm brown eyes. "Zixith, you should focus on your own practice. The fighting tests are getting harder. I don't want anyone to get hurt because they were not ready." Zixith's head feathers moved up and down as he laughed. "How nice of the human to worry about us weak aliens. Tell me, Morrison, do you really think your rough methods could challenge someone as fast as me?" More students gathered around them. They could tell something interesting was about to happen. Corin was one of them. He was from the Thrak Empire. His people had conquered 17 star systems by being very good at war. Corin was huge, even bigger than Jake. His voice was deep and scary. "The human speaks wisely," Corin said in his rumbling voice, "but I think he does not understand how strong warrior races like mine really are." Jake finished with his equipment and turned to face the group. When he spoke, his voice was quiet but strong. It was the voice of someone who had faced real danger many times. "I'm not looking down on anyone. I'm just saying that Earth's way of training is different, more intense. What we think of as basic survival skills might seem too much for those from safer worlds." Zixith laughed again, the sound ringing through the room like silver bells. "More intense? Child, my people have been warriors since before your kind discovered fire. Your Death World reputation is just fear stories and lies." "The Villani speaks truth," added Nyx. She was made of crystal and her voice made musical sounds. "These human legends are greatly exaggerated. No single world could make such dangerous people." Jake's face did not change, but people who knew him well would have seen his eyes get a little harder. "I'm not looking for a fight. I'm just saying that maybe we should all be more careful during practice. Some of the tests coming up are designed to push us as far as we can go." "Careful?" Corin stepped forward. His big body made Jake look small in comparison. "The mighty Thrak do not know the word careful. We know only victory and conquest." "Look," Jake said. His voice was still calm, but now it had an edge that made some students step back without thinking. "I'm trying to be respectful of the different cultures here, but I need you all to understand something important." He stopped talking and looked each of the aliens in the eye. "I've been holding back. We all have, all the human students. Our teachers made it very clear that we needed to be gentle for mixed training with other species. But if you keep pushing, if you really want to see what a primitive Deathworlder can do, then you're going to get a show that none of us will enjoy." The room became quiet. Then Zixith started laughing again. "Oh, this is wonderful. The human threatens us now. Tell me, Morrison, what could you possibly do that would worry warriors like us?" Jake looked at him for a long moment. Then he shrugged like someone who had tried to stop something bad but failed. "You'll find out in tomorrow's combat test. Just remember, you asked for this." As Jake walked away, the gathered aliens kept making fun of him. Their voices echoed through the practice room. None of them saw the few human students who had heard everything quietly slip away. They went to send urgent messages to their rooms. The warning had been given. The aliens had laughed at it and ignored it. By tomorrow evening, 3 alien students would be in the hospital wing. 2 more would be asking to change to different training groups, and the phrase Death World Human would mean something completely new throughout the academy. But that was tomorrow. Tonight they laughed and made jokes. They thought they knew what humans could do. They thought wrong. Jake walked back to his room slowly. His human roommate, Danny Walsh, was waiting for him. Danny looked worried. "You sure about this, Jake? The teachers have been really clear about not showing our full abilities." Jake sat on his bed and looked out the window at the stars. "They backed me into a corner, Danny. Maybe it's time the galaxy learned what humans are really capable of. Might prevent bigger problems later." Danny nodded but still looked worried. "Just be careful tomorrow. Don't hurt them too badly." Jake smiled, but it was not a happy smile. "I'll be as gentle as I can." But they insisted on seeing what a death world human can really do, so that's what they'll get. Outside their window, the stars shone coldly in the darkness of space. Tomorrow would bring a lesson that the alien students would never forget. Tonight was the last night they would laugh at humans from Earth. The fighting test room was full of excited students. Word had spread about yesterday's argument. Everyone wanted to see what they thought would be the human getting beaten badly. Commander Veltar was in charge of the tests. She was from the Zentari people. She was almost 8 feet tall with 4 arms and eyes like insects. Her voice spoke through the translation machines to all the students. Today's test will check your fighting skills, smart thinking, and survival instincts. You will face several challenges that get harder and harder. You cannot kill anyone, but serious injury is possible. Medical teams are ready. In the getting ready areas, Jake Morrison checked his gear carefully. Every move he made had a purpose. He had tried to sleep last night, but his roommate Danny kept him awake with worried whispers. "You sure about this, Jake? The teachers have been really clear about not showing what we can really do." "They forced me into this," Jake had said back. "Besides, maybe it's time the galaxy learned what humans can really do. Might stop bigger problems later." Now, as he got ready for the test, Jake felt the calm that always came before action. It was the same feeling he had during survival training in Australia's desert, in the Amazon jungle, and during winter training in Alaska. Earth had taught him that space was a dangerous place. The only way to survive was to be more dangerous than anything trying to kill you. Next door, Zixith was showing off to his fans. His natural Velani armor shone under the lights. His movements were like smooth dance moves that spoke of millions of years of evolution. Watch, friends, how a real warrior gets ready. Soon you will see why the Velani are thought to be the best fighters in the galaxy. Corin of the Thrak Empire was less showy, but just as confident. His huge body was covered in ceremonial fighting gear that had been in his family for generations. Each piece told a story of conquest, of enemies crushed under Thrak military power. He spoke to no one, but his presence showed the confidence of a predator species that had never lost. The other students made their own preparations with different amounts of ceremony and confidence. All of them had heard stories about human death world abilities, but none had seen real proof. Humans seemed soft, emotional, easy to hurt and tire out. Whatever advantages they had were surely balanced out by their mental problems and tendency to be reckless. Commander Veltar's voice echoed through the building. "Participants, enter the combat zone. Scenario 1 will start in 60 seconds. The combat zone was amazing. It used hologram technology and real construction to copy any environment in the galaxy. For the first test, it looked like a ruined city with multiple levels, piles of debris, and hidden passages. The goal was simple: reach the exit point while avoiding or stopping 3 robot hunter drones. Jake entered his starting position and immediately began what his teachers would have known as a tactical check. His eyes recorded every possible weapon, every piece of cover, every possible escape route. More importantly, he began calculating the most efficient ways to eliminate threats while saving energy and keeping position advantage. The other students entered with different amounts of ceremony. Zixith did a ritual combat dance, his movements hypnotically beautiful. Corin simply stood like a stone monument waiting for the challenge to begin. The others arranged themselves according to their species' traditional combat ways. Scenario 1. Urban Evasion. Begin. The hunter drones turned on with mechanical precision. Their sensors immediately locked onto the life signs scattered throughout the fake cityscape. Each drone had non-lethal but painful neural disruptors that could knock out a target without permanent damage. Zixith immediately showed why the Velani were famous for their agility. He flowed like water through the urban maze. His movements were almost impossible to follow as he jumped from surface to surface, using his species' natural abilities to move through the vertical landscape with supernatural grace. Corin took a different approach. He used his massive strength to smash through obstacles that would stop other species. When the first drone found him, he barely flinched at its neural blast and crushed it with his bare hands. The other aliens used their own species' advantages. The crystal Korthek used harmonic vibration to confuse the drone's sensors. Others relied on natural camouflage or technological countermeasures. Jake Morrison simply vanished. One moment he was visible in his starting position. The next moment he had melted into the urban environment like a ghost. The drones, programmed to track movement and heat signatures, began searching with increasing confusion as their main target seemed to have just stopped existing. In the watching galleries, teachers leaned forward with professional interest. This was something they had not expected to see. "Where did the human go?" muttered one of the Volani teachers. Commander Veltar's compound eyes tracked across the holographic displays, searching for the missing student. The drones were becoming increasingly upset as their hunting programs failed to find their target. The answer came 12 minutes into the scenario, when the second drone simply stopped. Its status light went dark, showing complete system failure. 3 minutes later, the third drone had the same fate. Jake Morrison appeared at the exit point, moving out of hiding like a predator emerging from perfect camouflage. In his hands, he carried the electronic cores of both hunter drones. This was technology that should have been impossible to remove without special tools. The watching galleries fell silent. "Scenario 1 complete," Commander Veltar announced, her voice carefully neutral. "Participants prepare for Scenario 2. But the real demonstration was just beginning. In the galleries, those who had laughed at the humans' warning yesterday were no longer laughing. The second test area began forming around them. This time it would be different. This time, Jake Morrison would show them something that would make them understand why humans were feared across the galaxy. The aliens were about to learn that Earth didn't just make tough creatures. Earth made creatures tougher than anything else in the known universe, and they had just challenged one of those creatures to show them what it could really do. The demonstration was far from over. And before it ended, every alien in that room would understand exactly what it meant to come from a death world, where everything was designed to kill you. They wanted to see what a human could do. They were about to find out, and they would regret asking. The second test changed the combat zone into a hostile jungle environment. It had dangerous animals, extreme weather, and very few resources. The goal seemed simple: survive for 1 hour while competing for limited supplies. What the non-human students didn't know was that this test had been designed by Earth's military trainers. It was based on real survival situations that human soldiers faced during basic training. The environment formed around them: a thick jungle with 90% humidity, temperatures at 42 degrees Celsius, and air thick with biting insects and poisonous spores. Holographic predators moved through the bushes. These creatures were designed to test every survival instinct the students had. Sixth immediately began to have trouble. His Volani body was perfectly made for his homeworld's thin air and low gravity. It couldn't process the thick, humid air efficiently. Within minutes, his graceful movements became labored. His breathing became shallow and fast. "The air," he gasped to Corin, who had positioned himself nearby. "How can they expect us to work in this poison?" Corin did better at first. His massive frame was built to handle harsh conditions. But the Thrak Empire's worlds were cold, dry places where combat was direct and honorable. This environment demanded stealth, adaptation, and endurance over brute strength. The big alien found himself crashing through plants, leaving obvious trails for the fake predators to follow. The other students struggled with their own challenges. Nyx's crystal structure began to cloud as moisture got into her harmonic chambers. The temperature difference was causing tiny cracks in her outer shell. Each crack reduced her natural abilities. Meanwhile, Jake Morrison had become one with the jungle. Within the first 5 minutes, he had built a shelter that was invisible from 10 meters away. He had made weapons from available materials and found 3 different sources of drinkable water. When the first holographic predator, a creature that looked like a cross between a tiger and a bear with acid for saliva, found his scent trail, it found nothing but empty air and the smell of crushed plants that hid human scents. From the watching galleries, the teachers watched with growing amazement. Commander Veltar's 4 hands moved across her control screens, calling up detailed body readings from each participant. "The human stress indicators are actually going down," reported Sub-Commander Thale, a young Zentari officer watching the medical stations. "His heart rate, stress hormones, and brain activity all suggest he's becoming more relaxed, not less." "Impossible," muttered Instructor Kexith of the Volani delegation. "No species can find comfort in such hostile conditions." 20 minutes into the scenario, the first crisis happened. Zixith, weakened by the oppressive atmosphere and confused by the constant moisture, stumbled into the territory of one of the larger predators. The holographic creature, programmed to respond to weakness and fear, immediately launched an attack. The Villani's natural speed, hampered by the environment, wasn't enough to escape. His graceful combat techniques, designed for open spaces and clean air, became clumsy and desperate in the thick plants. Within seconds, he was down. The creature's jaws closed around his body in what would have been a fatal bite in reality. The scenario's safety systems activated, stunning the holographic predator and sending a medical alert. But as the emergency teams prepared to remove the injured student, a shadow moved through the jungle with inhuman speed. Jake Morrison appeared like an avenging spirit. He moved through the dense undergrowth without disturbing a single leaf. In his hands, he carried a spear he had made from a sharp stone and a straight branch, bound with vines he had tested for strength. His approach was so quiet that the predator's advanced sensors didn't detect him until the improvised weapon punched through its holographic hide. The creature dissolved as its program registered a fatal strike. Medical team, stand down. Jake's voice came through the communication system as he knelt beside the fallen Villani. Zixith is in shock from dehydration and heat exhaustion, but his injuries are surface only. He needs electrolytes and cooling, not emergency removal. As he spoke, his hands moved with practiced efficiency. He checked vital signs and began basic field treatment using techniques that made the watching medical teams take frantic notes. Commander Veldtar leaned forward in her observation station. Morrison, return to your position. Other participants are not your responsibility. Jake's response was calm but firm. With respect, Commander. On a death world, everyone's survival is everyone's responsibility. I'm not abandoning an injured teammate regardless of scenario parameters. The silence in the observation galleries was deafening. 30 minutes into the scenario, Corin encountered his own crisis. The massive Thrak had been following what he thought was a game trail, hoping to corner and defeat one of the predators to demonstrate his species' superiority. Instead, he had walked into a trap. It was a section of jungle where the ground was unstable, designed to simulate a swamp or sinkhole. His enormous weight worked against him as the holographic terrain gave way. He crashed down into a pit filled with what appeared to be acid-producing plants. His ceremonial armor began to smoke and dissolve as he thrashed, trying to escape. "This is impossible," he roared, his voice carrying clearly through the humid air. "Honorable combat does not involve such trickery." Again, Jake appeared as if summoned. This time, he rappelled down on vines he had prepared earlier. He moved with the confidence of someone who had faced similar situations in Earth's most dangerous environments. He tossed Corin a neutralizing compound he had made from other jungle plants. This was knowledge gained during survival training in the Amazon basin. "Stop struggling," Jake ordered in a voice that carried absolute authority. "Your movements are making the acid more active. Trust me and follow my instructions exactly." For the first time in his military career, Corin found himself obeying a smaller being without question. By the scenario's end, Jake had rescued 3 students, neutralized 5 predators, and established a base camp that could have sustained a dozen people for weeks. He emerged from the jungle looking like he had been born there. His fellow students required immediate medical attention and psychological counseling. In the observation galleries, the laughter from the previous day had been replaced by stunned silence. Teachers frantically scribbled notes as they revised their understanding of human capabilities. But the evaluation was not over. 2 more scenarios remained. Each one was designed to push the participants further beyond their comfort zones. And Jake Morrison had not even begun to show them what a true death world human could do when the safety protocols were removed. The aliens were about to learn that their worst nightmares about humans were actually underestimations. The real terror was yet to come. The 3rd test dropped all pretense of controlled testing. The combat zone transformed into what the designers politely called a multi-threat survival environment. It was a frozen wasteland where temperatures dropped to minus 40 degrees Celsius. Oxygen levels were like those on high mountains, and the terrain itself was actively trying to kill anyone on it. The remaining participants had been reduced to half their original number. Several students had quit after watching the previous scenarios. Others had been medically removed due to exhaustion and stress-related injuries. Only the most stubborn, or most arrogant, remained to face what the teachers privately called the human scenario. Corin, despite his earlier rescue, had insisted on continuing. His pride demanded that he prove Thrak's superiority, even after witnessing Jake's impossible competence in the jungle. The massive alien had been fitted with additional protective gear, but his species' body was poorly suited to extreme cold. Nyx had undergone emergency repairs to her crystal structure, though hairline fractures still spread across her body like lightning. The Korthek were built for stability and precision, not the kind of adaptation that extreme environments demanded. 2 other aliens remained. Cadet Rexon was from the water-breathing Mordai. Cadet Zeph came from the high-gravity world of Titan Prime. Both were specialists in harsh environment survival, at least by their species' standards. Jake Morrison entered the frozen wasteland and immediately began what observers would later describe as a transformation. His movements shifted from merely efficient to predatorily purposeful. Within minutes, he had assessed wind patterns, identified shelter materials, and begun construction of what could only be described as a fortress. The other students struggled from the first moment. The thin air left them gasping. Their movements became sluggish and uncoordinated. The cold bit through even their advanced protective gear, sapping strength and clouding judgment. "This is madness," Rexon gasped, his water-breathing apparatus struggling to process the alien atmosphere. No species could thrive in such conditions. Corin, his earlier confidence shaken but not broken, pushed forward through sheer determination. "Thrak warriors do not yield to mere weather," he declared, though his voice carried less conviction than before. The first test came in the form of a blizzard that struck without warning. It was a weather pattern designed to simulate the sudden storms that made Earth's polar regions so deadly. Visibility dropped to 0. Temperatures fell another 20 degrees. Hurricane-force winds turned every snowflake into a cutting projectile. The non-human students were caught completely unprepared. Their species' survival instincts, developed on worlds with predictable weather patterns and stable climates, had no framework for dealing with such rapid environmental shifts. Rexon went down first. His equipment failed as ice formed in his breathing apparatus. Emergency protocols activated, but the extraction team couldn't reach him through the blizzard conditions. That's when Jake Morrison did, something that would be talked about in military academies for generations to come. He abandoned his secure shelter and walked into the blizzard. Not ran, not struggled and walked, moving with the steady confidence of someone who had trained in Earth's most hostile environments. He navigated through conditions that should have been impossible for any organic being to survive. His body mechanics had shifted into what survival experts would recognize as cold weather mode. His breathing patterns were optimized for frigid air. His movement techniques were designed to conserve heat while maintaining functionality. His mental state accepted the environment rather than fighting it. He found Rexon within minutes. The water-breathing alien was nearly frozen in a position that spoke of complete disorientation and panic. Without hesitation, Jake began field treatment that combined advanced medical knowledge with primitive survival techniques. "Emergency shelter construction," he reported calmly through the communications system. His voice was steady despite the howling wind. "Rexon is hypothermic but viable. Estimated time to stabilization, 15 minutes. As he worked, other participants began to fail. Nyx's crystal structure was shattering from thermal stress. Each temperature change caused more fractures in her harmonic chambers. Zeph, despite his high-gravity world origins, couldn't adapt to the combination of thin air and extreme cold. One by one, Jake found them and brought them to safety. But it was his encounter with Corin that finally broke the observer's understanding of human capabilities. The massive Thrak warrior had attempted to weather the storm through brute force. He stood upright against the wind and tried to push forward through sheer determination. His species' pride wouldn't allow him to seek shelter or admit weakness. Jake found him nearly buried in a snowdrift. His body temperature was dropping to dangerous levels despite his size and protective gear. The alien's pride was killing him. His body couldn't adapt to conditions that fell so far outside his evolutionary experience. "Corin," Jake's voice cut through the wind with absolute authority. "You need to follow my instructions exactly, or you're going to die." "Thrak warriors do not take orders from smaller beings," Corin replied, though his voice was slurred from hypothermia. Jake's response was quiet, but it carried a weight that made every observer lean forward. "Right now, I'm not a smaller being. I'm the apex predator in this environment, and you're prey that's about to become food for the elements. You can choose to be smart prey that survives or proud prey that feeds the scavengers. Decide now." For the second time in his life, Corin found himself completely outclassed by another being. But this time, the experience broke something fundamental in his understanding of the universe. Jake didn't just save the massive alien, he carried him. Through a blizzard that was defeating advanced technology and sophisticated environmental suits, a human who weighed a third of what Corin weighed lifted him and transported him to safety with no apparent effort. The observers watched in stunned silence as Jake Morrison methodically rescued every other participant. He constructed emergency shelters that exceeded military specifications. Then he calmly reported that all personnel were secure and awaiting extraction. When the scenario ended, Jake emerged from his shelter looking like he had just completed a routine training exercise. The others required immediate medical attention and psychological evaluation. In the observation galleries, the alien teachers sat in silence, broken only by the scratching of writing tools as they tried to process what they had witnessed. But there was still one more scenario, the final test that would push Jake Morrison to demonstrate the full extent of what a death-world human could do when survival was truly on the line. And this time, the safety protocols would be disabled. This time, death was not just possible. It was probable for anyone who wasn't built to survive on the most dangerous planet in the known galaxy.